What's going on? I think, there's like a big theme that we've touched on in some other like conversations, but we never really got to the down and dirty, like what you should do before you go into like a grad studio. Like kind of always mention, oh, grad school is like this, grad school is like that, but a defining thing that you should do before going into a grad school design studio in school, I think the biggest thing for me is mindset. Having an open mindset and not judging, I guess, a book by its cover, being like a studio or a specific project or a brief that you're given, is super important, because we all get these like preconceived notions of what everything is going to be at the end. We're going to get this amazing result. It's going to look exactly like this. The presentation is going to go like this, and my boards are going to look like this, when you haven't even looked at the brief as a problem that you're supposed to be solving.
Yeah. I feel like we all get caught up on design and like looks,
aesthetics,
and we don't take a step back to like dissect everything and kind of like strip everything, like you said, for what it is, and like really look at the essence of the problem that you're trying to solve, because that's what you should do. I mean, in my opinion, as a designer, what a designer should do is solve a problem, right? Obviously we're all different, and we're always going to try to like stand out and bring what we can bring as designers to the table from our perspectives. But the main goal of a studio, I think, should be exploration, and it should be to get to an end result that can further solve and clarify like a given problem.
Yeah.
And mentality, man, like when I started, so my undergrad years were really bad. My mentality completely changed once I got to grad school. It was a different ballgame, right?
Yeah, and I think everybody has to be like that,
Yeah. It comes to a point where, I mean, even in like undergrad, people get left behind. People, they give up, and grad school only intensifies that, I guess, that issue.
Well, like you said, the playing field then becomes enhanced. Your ideas have to be a little bit sharper. You have to be thinking a little bit more sophisticated, the way you explain your ideas, and even visualize those concepts has to be clearer.
Yeah, and like, for example, like a lot of people, and we saw this like all throughout grad school, like just because you have a project, like let's say like a typology, right? And what you end up with is something that is successful, that it does what it's supposed to do, and that it's good, right? It's okay. I think that somebody in grad school within like the architecture field should try to aspire to explore and see how far they can push the boundaries of what a typology really means, and to, like, it really will surprise you what you can end up with if you get out of your comfort zone. Like, I think that's something that, again and again and again, it really surprised me. I mean, I changed all my projects like constantly, like, because I was just like hit a wall, and from the get-go my first idea was always a little conventional or a little too radical, and trying to fix it and like going through that process, I always found something new and exciting, especially when I would like talk to someone, kind of like communicate my ideas and bounce off ideas. It's a really great opportunity to get out of your own head.
Yeah, which I think kind of like what you're going back to is there's these two forks in the road. You could either decide to stick with that initial idea, which some people do, and they see that one idea all the way through, which is great. There's an iterative nature to that. And then there's the more direct idea of iteration, which is changing and constantly updating a new idea, scrapping, throwing the ball of paper away and starting from scratch. But I think the key to either or is going back to the initial concept statement or your initial idea, your brief. Always go back to that brief. So many times in school we would be facing the challenge or the problem and I'm stuck. Well, go back to that brief. Well, what is the project supposed to be about? And how did you choose to answer the question of how is this going to help? If you haven't even answered that question, choose to answer that question in either route. But when you get stuck and you don't know what that initial idea, see it through. What are you doing to meet that design brief?
Yeah, go back to the roots of the problem. Like, make sure that every time you kind of like go forward a lot because we tend to go down like a design rabbit hole,
Mm-hmm.
and we do not look back, and whatever we end up with is what we end up with, right? And that's why we have so many of us that when we go to like a final crit, like your narrative is off, like the solution that you came up with is completely off, and a lot of times it doesn't really target the main problem statement that you originally had.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be able to call yourself out as a designer,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't matter. Like, I'm all for breaking rules,
Yeah.
and I think that if you're gonna break a rule, you might as well like break it,
Yeah.
not like a little bit. But always make sure that you tackle the original problem,
Yeah.
right? Because then it stops becoming about what you're trying to fix, and it starts becoming about you and like your method of self-expression, which I think it's good, but it's a little selfish.
It becomes less about design and problem solving and more about like an art, if you will, or a form of expression, like you said. And I think the best way to mitigate those things is kind of like, I guess with the rule of threes, you would just, 1, go back to the brief, 2, make sure that you're actually like answering a question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the third is being organized. You know, once you've checked a box off of a deliverable or some sort of thing that's part of that question or the equation, if you turn it into a math problem, make sure that as you move forward, you're constantly sticking to that root or concept statement so that the visuals, the drawings, the representation all match. And then you're going to have a holistic project at the end of the day.
Yeah, everything in this should be cumulative.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything should be kind of like a stepping stone for like the next phase, the next phase, the next phase. Once you have everything like not connected
Mm-hmm.
and like kind of like randomized and like thrown around, and you try to like bridge all of that together, it becomes a little chaotic.
Yeah, and you can tell. You can tell when people try to stitch things together. But I think what you said was great. Hit the nail on the head. Was be able to call yourself out and then get into groups or, you know, Zoom, call a couple people that's in your studio or figure something out and be able to go at it collaboratively.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums everything we want to talk about today. Tune in for the next one.